Ravens came to play with a sense of urgency. The Bills did not. And with that, the Buffalo Bills get their first loss of the season, falling to 3-1, 35-10. Ravens on top on Sunday Night Football. Kevin Carroll with you as always. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone Podcast.
And I'm Andy Young at M&T Bank Stadium, where it was bully ball from start to finish for the Buffalo Bills. An 87-yard touchdown run from Derrick Henry on the Ravens' very first play from scrimmage. A sign of things to come all night long as the Bills were beat up on both sides of the football.
Yeah, Andy, this one was ugly from the jump. I didn't like the way the Bills came out and attacked on offense. I didn't like the fact that they received the opening kickoff. When I saw that, I was like, this could be a long night. When Derrick Henry rips off that giant touchdown run to start the game, it was a little bit of deja vu. It felt like a situation the Bills had been in, looking back to, I think it was 2001 against the Tennessee Titans when he ripped off like a 76-yard touchdown run, put the Bills in a hole. That game, the Bills scratched and clawed their way back but couldn't finish it off. This one, Andy, that run by Henry at the start of the game, just in a nutshell, let everyone know how this game was going to go all night. Try what the Bills did in the second half. You throw in that trick play that had everyone scratching their head, and I'm sure Bills Mafia pounding the tables they normally throw each other through. And this was just a frustrating loss, but one I do think that the Bills can build off of because this Ravens team, we all knew were no joke. Even though they had the one win on the season, you knew going into this one that this was going to be a battle.
Yeah, the Ravens pride themselves on being a physical, strong team at the point of attack, and beating you up with Derrick Henry and Justice Hill in this game. Their offensive line really outworked the Bills' defensive line at the point of attack. And this was a game where we knew that the second level of the Bills' defense was going to be really tested, more so than they really had been throughout the first 3 games of the season. Yeah, you can talk about the speed that the Dolphins have on offense, but it's really hard to replicate the physicality of Derrick Henry paired with the elusiveness in the running and passing game of Lamar Jackson. And that's going to really put the test to your linebackers. Well, who's not in the lineup for the Buffalo Bills in this game? Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, Taron Johnson, your normal nickel cornerback who's a de facto linebacker, and you're putting Balin Spector and Dorian Williams and Cam Lewis and Nicholas Morrow when they go to a 4-3 set up against one of the more physical teams that can also provide you with massive misdirection because Lamar Jackson can just pull the ball back on those read options and head out the other way. And the Bills struggled with it all night long. They struggled against draws. They struggled against screens. Those killed them early and often in this game. And, of course, Derrick Henry right up the gut was no problem either. So they really had no answers throughout the course of this game. And defensively, you know, there was some concern about this coming into this game and really throughout the first few weeks of the season because of the banged up nature. When you're losing all pro players like they have, it's hard to recover from that against teams that are going to try to do this to you. Over the years, Sean McDermott's teams have been pretty darn good at limiting Lamar Jackson. Tonight, not so much. He was able to do what he needed to do, and then they rushed for, as a team, 271 yards. I mean, you're probably not going to win many games when you allow that to happen. And the time of possession wasn't that far off. They both had same amount close in first downs, turnovers, all those sorts of things. It was just they had no answers defensively, and then offensively, that messed things up too on the other side of the ball because you're playing catch-up all night.
I don't think Derrick Henry, Andy, was even touched. Or if it was flag football on that first touchdown run, he just got right through that line. If you go back and watch that, I mean, everybody looked like it was just a mess. Rasul Douglas looked like he was way off. The linebackers were way off. The defensive line was off. It just looked like something I think everyone thought was going to be the first play from scrimmage was a handoff to Derrick Henry. It was, and the Bills couldn't do anything about it. And, I mean, that was just the start. You know, Dorian Williams and Balin Spector, I thought in the first half they weren't good in the run game, and there were a couple of pass plays where you just saw Balin Spector chasing down his guy who was wide open, or Dorian Williams gets deked out of his cleats by his guy who ends up in the end zone for a touchdown. That improved in the second half when the Bills started to attack more and not play reactionary football, which I thought they were in reactionary mode on both sides of the ball the entire first half of this game, and they couldn't get out of their own way. And then when they started to, they come up with this trick play, Andy, which, again, I brought it up earlier. This is a huge sticking point. It's like with anything. You have the momentum. Things are working. Josh Allen is playing out of his mind. Not only to call a trick play there, but the play itself seemed like it was messed up from the start with how close Josh Allen ended up with Samuel there. It was just a mess, and then it just fell apart from there. That was totally embarrassing, but sticking with the defense, Dorian Williams and Balin Spector with a tough outing in this one early, and the good that they did do was way outweighed by what ended up happening throughout the entire game. That's including the turnover. I think Dorian Williams forced the turnover on Lamar Jackson. Balin Spector got it, but you got nothing out of it.
Yeah, I mean, that was highlight of the night for the Bills defense, right? Like, those guys had struggled all night long. Everybody's criticizing them up and down on social media, and they struggled, no doubt about that. They weren't in the right places. Sean McDermott alluded to reading your keys and knowing your signs and being in the right place, especially when there's screens or misdirections or draws or things of that nature. You refer back to the 87-yard run right off the bat from Derrick Henry. Go back and watch that play. It's like dominoes. Ed Oliver gets taken out by the fullback, and then you see the linebacker get taken out, and then Rasul Douglas is out of position, and it's gone, right? And Derrick Henry at 6'3" and 250-some pounds with speed like we haven't seen. I mean, it's a freight train, and it's a runaway freight train, and that's kind of how it was all night. I mean, this is a learning experience for those young guys. They were backups coming into this season, not a ton of experience for a reason, right? They're young, and they had all pro players ahead of them. So this is the kind of game you learn from, and you try to figure those things out, and you coach them up where to be next time and hope that their instincts and their keys and those sorts of things get them in a better position next time around. Good news for the Bills, you're not going to face a team like the Ravens very often that can play this way and beat up the Bills the way they have. It doesn't happen very often, right? I mean,
I was going to say, Andy, that's
not something that happens often to the Bills.
As a guy who likes to be rather positive, Andy, you look at this game, yeah, for the younger guys, it's a learning moment. It's a teachable moment for Sean McDermott and his young team. The fact that, Josh Allen says you could tell right off the bat the Ravens wanted it more. He didn't say that exactly, but that's the gist of it right there, is a bit worrisome. But you're right. When you look at what this team is and the fact that you're dealing with Derrick Henry, you're dealing with a mobile quarterback in Lamar Jackson who can also throw the ball. Look at the rest of the Bills' schedule. There's nothing at all like that. There's nothing at all like what the Ravens are right now anywhere in the NFL. The fact that they got Derrick Henry, you knew that they were going to be a tougher out than even Lamar Jackson's MVP season a year ago. So this was one that it happened week 4 of the season. Bills could easily right the ship from this, but I do now have a lot of questions as far as how this defense can hold up and what exactly we have in this Bills offense where they say everybody eats. And tonight, no one really ate per se, Andy. Josh Allen didn't have a touchdown pass in this one. Ty Johnson with the touchdown run. And the offense just seemed out of sync besides Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid, but Shakir's banged up early in the game. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond. I mean, big game with the Houston Texans coming up next week on the road again. Would like to see a response there, but I have a lot of questions with this Bills offense after what they did tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's you don't want to necessarily jump off the cliff that the sky is falling and that this team that was looking so good through the first 3 weeks is suddenly going to fall apart. But there's a lot of reason for concern, and some of those concerns we talked about all throughout the offseason and into the season. That, okay, when you need the big play, who's going to step up? When you have a team that is not allowing you to run the football and the game script has changed things because you're down and you're trailing, do you have the horses to get back in the game? Offensive line really struggled in this game. Josh Allen was running for his life almost from the start, and we hadn't seen that at all through the first 3 games, much at all. And obviously that causes problems. And then who wins one-on-one battles? I mean, you saw Shakir make some catches. You saw Kincaid make a couple of catches. You saw Coleman have a drop on one, but it made a couple other nice catches too. But, man, you're missing that big key weapon, I feel like. And that kind of hurt them in this game. The Ravens, you probably weren't going to be able to run the ball super successfully against them. Their pass defense had struggled. The fact that they were not able at any point to take advantage of that, really, other than a couple of broken plays or some hero ball from Josh Allen to Khalil Shakir, is concerning. And those are some of the same issues we've been talking throughout the offseason about, and they reared their head a little bit. I mean, what do you think, Kevin? Do you think that if they get in a game like this where they're behind, they can roar back against a team like this that plays good defense? It makes you wonder.
I want to say I have faith that they can do it if some bonehead trick play isn't called. I mean, they were doing it, Andy. They were, of course, you needed Josh Allen in this game to be Josh Allen. That pass to Shakir was outright amazing. We've seen Josh Allen do it before. That set up the Ty Johnson touchdown. But that pass with Allen rolling out, patented Allen style, getting to the boundary there and then just zipping the ball right before stepping out of bounds to a wide open Khalil Shakir. Shouldn't be surprised that we're seeing that. So I do have faith that they'd be able to do that. Keon Coleman, yeah, tough drop early, but those 2 passes down the sideline were great. Coleman with great catches there, had a catch over the middle as well. Yeah, I do have faith, but they need to just stick to what's working sometimes. You know, they should have been, what should it have been? 21-17 or something like that and early in the second half and been right back into the game. Instead, you try that bonehead trick play and the wheels just came off. And after that, it was, you know, you can talk all you want. Well, if Tyler Bass is that field goal in the second half
after that. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, yeah. I hear, well, it was only a 2-touchdown game if he kicked that field goal. Let's be realistic. That field goal wasn't going to matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're a little more upset or critical of that trick play than I am. I don't think it was the right call at all, by any means. But that wasn't the end of the game completely. You know, they, like Stevie Johnson and I were talking in the Buffalo End Zone postgame show on television. You know, you hit that play and it works. Everybody's cheering, right? But it just didn't seem like it was the right time for it. Like you said, they had a couple of 3-and-outs finally against the Ravens defense. They had scored a touchdown on their previous drive. They get the ball back, and they're seemingly moving down the field with a chance to get right back into it within a score, or at least give yourself a chance at a field goal and get within a touchdown. 8 points maybe. And it just was, the play didn't look good. It looked awkward. I mean, putting Josh Allen out there, I mean, he got hurt.
Right.
Like he was in real pain at that point. Like, yeah, you can talk about both the call and the play itself. Neither one worked. And it really hampered the rest of the game after that because the Ravens are able to go down and score and the wind's knocked out of their sails. I mean, at 28-10, it's pretty much curtains at that point.
I just remember, this is going back years, something happened with the Patriots where they ran the Wildcat once, and whoever had the ball threw an interception. And the whole idea was, you have Tom Brady. You should never be running the Wildcat and have someone else under center with their hand on the ball. You have to feel that way with this Bills team and with Josh Allen. Like, why would you ever, for that reason, take the ball out of him being in control off the snap? I can't wrap my head around it. That's why I think it's driving me so bananas.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you too hard on it. Like, I'm kind of giving the other side of it that, hey, if it works,
Right.
everyone feels good. Or if it just ends up being an incomplete pass and life goes on, the result makes it far worse. But I agree with you. It was not the right time to make that play, especially the kind of trick play that you're doing, right? If you want to try like a flea flicker or something like that, I could see that. But, you know, putting Josh Allen out wide and then throwing a screen from Samuel, it just ill-conceived at that time particularly. So I agree with you on that. I won't fight you too hard, K-Man.
Do you think Samuel is struggling here, Andy? I just, a lot was talked about and expected from him in a certain role.
He's their highest paid wide receiver. He's making $7 million a year. He was basically their prize free agent acquisition, and they're kind of struggling to get him involved.
Yeah, they talk like, wasn't there talk that they were hoping that he'd be Deebo Samuel light for the Bills, that they'd be able to use him out of the backfield and in all these different ways. And it just seems like either A, it's not working, or B, he doesn't seem like one of Josh Allen's go-to guys during the game. It's Shakir, it's Kincaid, and it's Coleman at this point.
Yeah, I can't really explain it. I'm not sure whether it's usage. He's not getting as much usage as I thought we'd see him get. I know some people had talked about him perhaps being the leader, being the guy that led this team in receptions, at least from the wide receivers' perspective. And that's certainly been a far cry. He's not on the field as much as I thought he would be. He's not being used in the way I thought he might be. And maybe they haven't had to break it out yet, but you probably should start to try to figure that out, because you don't have a whole lot of game-breaking players, and maybe he can be that for you, but you're not really scratching the surface on it yet.
That's what I was expecting. I think like the only time we really see him is on those bubble screens, you know, and then it's up to him to get up the field. And you have Khalil Shakir, who's that guy too, and probably does it better at this point. So why would you do that?
Yeah, I think the Bills kind of have built their offense around, we've heard about it so long, they built their offense around these yards after catch guy, run after catch, because teams are playing the two high safeties and not allowing the deep stuff, and they lose a guy like Diggs and they lose Davis, who are those downfield threats. And so they bring in guys who are able to do work in the short area and turn that into explosive plays for whatever reason, and I don't know what that is. They've yet to unlock it in Curtis Samuel, and it'd be nice if they tried to figure that out pretty soon here, because they need more weapons, especially if you're going to play this everybody eats thing. Well, if they're taking away some of the guys that typically eat, you got to have somebody else step up.
Yeah, absolutely. I gave high praise last week to the Bills' offensive line, Andy, and I think if I'm gonna give them high praise, you also got to be critical of them in this game against the Ravens and what they weren't able to do, and the fact that Josh Allen was under pressure a lot and had to roll out and had to be on the move in order to make any play work at all.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't see the things from the offensive line that you had seen. They had kept Josh Allen pretty darn clean throughout the 3-game winning streak to start the season, and it just simply wasn't there tonight. Every time Allen dropped back, within a moment, there was a guy pushing towards him, and he's having to either scramble outside or try to step up in the pocket. The Ravens also did a fantastic job of, when Allen did get to the outside of the pocket, containing him, not letting him hit that right-handed throw across his body throw, short of the one he did to Shakir, which was ridiculous. That's a play really only Allen even attempts to make. He just had no time, and they didn't open up much in the way in the run game. They didn't, and Another thing I want to bring up too, Kevin, and I think we talked about this earlier. The motion. What happened to the creativity in the Bills' offense? The different things that had been a hallmark so far. It really wasn't there. I mean, were they trying to go away from their tendencies because the Ravens thought they were going to do those things? That could be, but what they did tonight did not work out. Offensive line is going to be a start for that because they just simply couldn't hold up in the run or the pass game.
So I bring that up to our buddy Stevie Johnson during the post-game show that, it was noticeable to me that they weren't doing pre-snap motion like they did against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Was that because of how Jacksonville ran their defense, mostly man, and wanted to recognize it and pull it out and knew that the Ravens weren't going to be doing that often, so why bother? But I just think that's another situation of if it's working, just keep on doing it. Who cares what the Ravens are showing or not showing? It seemed like getting guys on the move helped some of these guys, pass catchers, get open, Andy, because it was very concerning to me that you didn't see a lot of separation with any of these guys. Most of these catches that were made by Bills receivers in this one, they were pretty much in traffic or covered in just none of those things like you saw with some of the Ravens plays where they had guys just wide open downfield.
And that's a credit to the Ravens too. Like, let's not get that twisted. That's a really good team, well coached, has been for 20 years in essence, right? Since their early Super Bowl days with Ray Lewis and that crew.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like the Ravens deserve some credit in that they were both better in terms of game plan, in terms of execution, and physicality. So kudos to them. Like, it just was one of those nights. The Bills certainly could do so much better in every facet of the game. And there's going to be a lot to learn from and a lot of hard lessons from this game. But it's early in the season. It's, you're still leading the division after all of that. So life goes on, but you've got to figure out some of those things because good teams will take advantage of that sort of thing.
I'm going back and forth in my head, Andy, so I'll just ask you. I have two things
that scares me.
Yeah. Two things. It's the Bills dealing with the run in those linebacker positions. We know we expect Terrell Bernard to be back at some point, and maybe even Matt Milano later in the season. But is that a bigger concern with both the run game and the middle of the field? Or is it more concerning that the Bills now don't have that alpha wide receiver on offense and that it's just going to be up to Josh Allen week in and week out? It's so funny how after the Jaguars game, there was no worry about anything. And now it's like all you see are issues with this Bills offense through one loss.
Yeah, I mean, I think long term it's more concerning the depletion on the injury side and the defensive side of the ball. I mean, that hurts, right? They've gotten through it and they've been okay. And McDermott's a good defensive coach, always has been, to figure those sort of things out. But it is concerning. But hopefully in the next week or two they get Bernard back, maybe Taron Johnson, we'll see as well. And then Milano's more of a pipe dream towards the end of the season.
Right.
But if they can get those two guys back in the next couple of weeks, that's going to be big because that just takes the pressure off some of those young players. Because we've seen that the Bills' offense can be successful without the alpha dog and the everybody eats mentality. I think there's going to be ways that the Bills have to figure out when teams are taking away the certain things they want to do. Where can they go? Who can they rely on? That's why you have the course of a season to figure those things out. So I'm not going to sit here and call myself Chicken Little and that the sky is falling and that this team has so many concerns. They're the same concerns we probably have had since training camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wide receiver, explosiveness, and separation. And once the injuries start happening on defense, those pile up. Those are the same concerns. They got through it 3-0 without them and looked like the best team in the NFL. They just had a rough night. Those things they're going to work on. They're going to get them figured out, hopefully, and get things going in the right direction. Are they concerning? Yes. Is the season over? Is this calls to fire people? No. I mean, let's get real here.
It'll be interesting to see how they respond. It's all well and good after the game, Andy, to say, we're going to learn from this, we're going to move forward. But, there are issues. Houston is a good team. I will say this, even after that, the game with the Jets haven't looked great, but that defense against the Bills is always concerning no matter what the Jets are doing on offense. Josh Allen and the Bills offense, sometimes it looks like the Jets have their number. But, of course, Houston's coming at first, and it'll be interesting to see how they actually respond, because we all know that's going to be the big talking point of Stephon Diggs. But now I think more concerning about Stephon Diggs is, these two issues that I brought up and how they get this thing back on track and actually move forward from tonight's ugly loss.
I want to ask you this. Okay, you bring up the two issues.
Yeah.
How about the third issue that I think has a lot of people really concerned? And that's Tyler Bass. Misses another field goal tonight. I'm mildly concerned about Tyler Bass, and I've tried to pump the brakes on the cut him now sort of stuff and cut him in training camp. I think he's been a good kicker in the league, but he's just really inconsistent right now. Yeah, McDermott sang his praises and said we have full confidence. Look at the 50-yarder he nailed. But then he misses a 48-yarder when the game is still in contention. It's going to come down to one of these games where they need a late field goal to win or to force overtime, to take the lead late. Can they rely on Bass? I don't know. I just don't know. They may not have a choice, and maybe he comes through and he gets it figured out, but it is concerning right now. I don't know what better option they would have. They have worked guys out, right? Maybe they've kicked the tires on a couple of guys and they might pull the trigger on that. I don't know.
That's the issue right now. And again, I said this during the post-game show. I think a lot of kickers who are solid kickers have had their issues seemingly this season. I bring up the Ravens kicker, who's normally money. He struggled early on in the season. Why can't I think of his name? Is it Justin Tucker?
Justin Tucker.
Yeah, Justin Tucker had his struggles early in the season.
Harrison Butker has had his struggles, but at the same time, other kickers, like you look at Dallas's kicker. I mean, he's making like 60-yarders consistently, and you see a lot of that. First couple of weeks of the season, it was the story that kickers were so darn good. Should we, widen the hashes? Should we do all these different things? Should we, narrow the goalposts because kickers are so money? I think it just depends on the guy, but to see his inconsistencies after what he was earlier in his career, it is concerning, and it doesn't appear that he's like fully getting it back.
Yeah, and I mean, this all goes back to the game against the Chiefs in the playoffs where it could have tied it up there, and it seems like the big question going into this season was he going to be able to move on from that? And it looks like that's still creeping around in his head. So that's a concern, Andy. But if you don't have anything better out there than Tyler Bass, you're stuck with Tyler Bass.
And he has a contract, and you don't have a ton of cap space. So you better be darn sure if you're going to cut that guy that there's something better out there and more serviceable than him. I think they're content to still roll with him. Sean McDermott says ad nauseum they have confidence in Tyler Bass. I mean, what else is he going to say? He says, hey, he's got to make that kick, and we're going to work through it. Until they cut the guy, they're not going to say we don't have confidence in him, because the instant they do that and then he goes out there and has to play, then that's even less confidence in himself.
Exactly.
So they've got to publicly sing the praises and say they have full faith in Tyler Bass until they don't and they make the move.
And again, Andy, before we head out, I think you and I can both agree that when we looked at this schedule and we said through 4 weeks of football the Bills were going to be 3-1, before the season started, I think a lot of fans out there would take that.
Yep.
This is a tough pill to swallow, getting a beat down on national TV, something that this version of the Buffalo Bills just not used to having that happen to them. But I've said this year in and year out. first 4 weeks of the season, you kind of figuring out what your team is. Now let's see what they do moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, you lose that streak of 43 consecutive games, an NFL record of not losing a game in the regular season by more than 6 points, dating back to November of 2021. That's pretty remarkable. Sean McDermott teams don't get blown out typically. Doesn't happen very often. One thing that does happen often, though, is when the Bills do have a loss, when they have a tough game, they often bounce back pretty well. Josh Allen, when he has a rough game, often bounces back pretty well. That's been a hallmark of him throughout his career. So that's the test now. Don't let this begin to snowball and roll into a 2 or 3 game losing streak, right?
Right.
Houston's a good team. I don't think they've looked particularly overwhelming, but they're a good team and they're very talented. And you've got the Stephon Diggs factor. I've been really unimpressed with the Jets. I thought they would be a lot better than they are, but they still have very good players and over the years have caused a lot of problems for the Bills. So you got to go down there and at least split the next 2, right? Like either beat Houston and maybe you lose to the Jets or vice versa. And then you come through that stretch and you're, 4-2. Okay, now we're still okay. We're talking. But if you lose both and you lose 3 straight and you're 3-3, people are going to feel some type of way about their Buffalo Bills. So I think they'll get things figured out and get it righted. And I look to them to have a much better effort, especially in the physicality department next week against the Houston Texans.
Yeah, and there you go. It's Bills at Texans with a 1 o'clock kickoff. That one coming up on Sunday. Bills regular media work week coming up because they're kind of back on a Sunday to Sunday schedule, Andy. So we'll be back with you with another Buffalo End Zone podcast coming up in the middle of the week as they get ready to face Stephon Diggs.
Who's ready for the Diggs Bowl? Let's go.
Everyone's had this circled on their calendar, Andy. Here we are. Things move pretty quick once the NFL season starts. For Andy Young, I'm Kevin Carroll. We'll catch you in the middle of the week.